What is up, scrubs? I'm back, and as you can see, I've upgraded my equipment. Kind of. I don't know if it's an upgrade because the iPhone camera is really good, but now I have a webcam, and thank you to Mr. Waffles for providing me with webcam. Wonderful of him to send me a webcam. Truly appreciate it. Um, he took a note of my content and said it was pretty okay, but then said, hey man, look kind of like a bum with your videos that are like this with black on each side, and I agree. So I'm back and I'm here to do a deck profile. So this deck profile is pretty interesting. It's one of my favorite decks to play right now. And in my last video, I talked about basically the importance of cards being knowledge and gaining advantage through having cards in hand. And the deck I'm about to go through actually gains advantage in a different way that I like to talk about, which is gaining virtual advantage across the course of a game and then providing like a really cool in-game for you. So this deck's definitely more combo-y. Has a really good matchup against a lot of the Vegeta decks that are out there, so I'm a really big fan of it. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to your leader. It's the Galactic Emperor Frieza. Yep, this card. This card's really good. This card's really good at providing virtual hand advantage. A lot of people don't realize that when you're playing in the higher competitive levels, like, people don't like to attack into you and give you life. They'd rather attack your battle cards that are tapped. Well, Galactic Emperor Frieza rids of that. It rids of their ability to do that. So it forces the opponent that if they want to swing at you, especially if they're awakened on their awakened side, and they want to swing at you to draw a card, they're going to have to give you a card. So you being stuck at 5 or 6 life is a really hard thing to happen when you're playing this leader, because you're able to keep your battle cards alive. And another thing about this, the color combination that I'm playing, is that there's some key characters in the deck that allow the deck to be successful, all because of this leader. And this leader having the ability to, of course, untap the characters that are in play. So I'm a huge fan of Galactic Emperor Frieza, especially in this deck. So now we'll go into the deck profile. As you can see here, our wonderful leader, of course, Frieza Galactic Emperor. We already touched on that before and why this is so important. Now let's go through the cards in the deck that kind of make this deck work and make the engine work. One of my favorite one-drops in the game, and the reason why I love playing yellow so much, because the character package, is because of Avenging Frieza. This card's very important. Avenging Frieza allows you to filter through your deck, find more of the Frieza's army cards, thin out your deck, and that'll improve your draws over the course of the game. This is really big when you're trying to find those combo pieces in the later parts of the game. They're going to allow you to swing the game in your favor, and oftentimes I'm closing out the game for you. Because there's a lot of times where you don't want to draw a lot of these pesky cards that are in your deck, and Avenging Frieza really helps fill that out for you. So this is one of the premier one-drops in the deck itself. Also at the one spot, we have one of my favorite cards in the game, that I love playing with, and one of my favorite characters in the show, Goldo. Goldo is one of the more impressive characters that you can play. Not only because, of course, he's a blocker, like that's generic, but the fact that when he comes into play, he taps down or a 1 or a 2 drop. So he gives you that tempo advantage of tapping down one of the other person's characters and then swinging with your leader to then not give your opponent a card and kill one of the battle cards that they sunk resources into to play and remove another piece of combo potential for them. So it's really funny to see your opponent invest 2 or 1 energy into a character. You play a Goldo on your turn for 1 energy, and then you're swinging at it and killing it with your leader. So again, one of my favorite plays to do, and often your favorite target when you hit Avenging Frieza, especially if you have a couple yellow energy up and you have a way to abuse it that turn. So Goldo, great for tempo, great for this deck, great for Frieza, great for yellow, just great. Next we have, tied for the best one drop in the game, San Kaba. San Kaba and Galactic Emperor Frieza were born to be together. San Kaba is one of the most imposing threats that your opponent has to deal with, because of the fact that whenever you're swinging with it, you're drawing an extra card, and it's just gaining double strike and becoming a huge character only for 1 energy. So it's advancing your game plan and at the same time putting that pressure on your opponent that you want it to do. So it's allowing you to get closer to flip, and of course make your opponent have to make some really tough decisions in the early parts of the game. And one of the things that a lot of red decks have the problem with is, like, whenever you use Kaba and you swing with Kaba, you end up getting Kaba killed because Kaba essentially will just end up being tapped for the turn. The first thing your opponent's going to do is attack into that Kaba just to knock it off the board. And Frieza at the end of the turn will untap your Kaba. So that is extremely powerful play and allows Kaba to stay on the board. And again, leads into another one of the combo pieces in the deck that I like to use. Lastly, at the ones, we have Sorbet. Another blocker, another target with our Avenging Frieza. And the blockers in this deck are relatively important in all parts of the game, especially the later parts of the game when you're really just trying to assemble the combo and finish your opponent when they have just 2 to 3 life remaining. And so the blockers end up being really important. Also, Sorbet's ability is extremely relevant since this deck plays a lot of the Frieza's army cards. You're able to then pitch a card during your combo step to potentially hit something off the top in order to add to your combo. So I love Sorbet in this deck, and again, just a really efficient card to play for 1 energy, especially in the mid and later parts of the game you don't feel bad about. And it's another card that can get filtered out by Avenging Frieza. So we really want to saturate Avenging Frieza's potential by having all these different 1-drops and different Frieza's army cards in the deck. Next is for Doria. You just play 4 of those. Because when you're at 4 or less life, you draw a card, and it's plus 10k, and it doesn't cost you anything, so. Yeah, that's it. And yellow has the best one, because they have the Doria as their 10k combo, and the Doria gets no love. Especially if you guys ever watch DBZ Abridged. The Doria is one of the best characters in the Frieza arc. Next, we have 4 2-drop hits. This is part 1 of our combo. This is one of our babies. This is one of the cards that we need to protect with everything we have, and that's why a lot of the extra cards in this deck are built around protecting this card as well as other cards that are in the deck. Hit, 2 energy, 15k, great attacker, and again great with Frieza because you don't have to leave hit susceptible on your opponent's turn to getting killed because Frieza will untap your hit, which is huge. Next, run 2x Kui. TJ Corcoran actually turned me on to Kui. He's definitely right. Having something that costs 2 and is 12k and as a blocker can be really annoying in the early parts of the game because if your opponent tries to attack and you have a Kui, a lot of times they're not going to be able to actually hit Kui. And if you want to use Kui as an attacker in the early game, you can attack, untap with your Frieza leader, and then have Kui open to block the next turn too. So I'm a really big fan of Kui with Galactic Frieza. It just provides you a lot of tempo that you really need and creates another piece of virtual advantage. It's something that you're getting to attack with and you have with on the defense, and so that's another card that makes Galactic Frieza so much better than his other counterparts. We played 2 Sui. Again, just trying to saturate the amount of hits that we have in the deck. Sui is great for that, and Sui again, 2-drop, 15k, better than a pool from people's opinions. Not sure why. I'm pretty certain it's just because people don't like apples, whatever. But I'm a huge fan of Sui and Pool, and just the fact that they're Frieza's army targets is really big for Avenging Frieza to make your draw better. And of course, it's just, the worst thing it is possibly it's just a source of yellow energy, which sometimes it is. But again, having these generic 2-costed 15k attackers is really big for these decks because they provide, again, that free tempo and that free low investment with high reward. So I'm a huge fan. Next, we have 4 Confident Botamo. One of the better attackers in the game because he can attack battle cards that are active, which is a really great effect in this game. It allows you to get that free board control if you need it. And of course, Confident Botamo, unfortunately, he's actually one of the red sources that we end up charging a lot just because he gives... he's a red card that, of course, is dual purpose, great energy, but he's also a great attacker. And because he's just a red card that we play 4 of that we don't mind giving up to energy. So Botamo is really in this deck to serve both purposes. He's both a really good attacker as well as I stated before, a really good source of red energy in the deck. That's one thing I've noticed in a lot of my deck building lately. As I've played the game a lot more, is I play a 4 of a lot of cards that I'm just like, I'm 100% okay with this card being energy as opposed to my later game threats. And so it's really starting to translate. And I'm starting to see a little bit more success with doing it that way. I strive to have a lot of redundancy in a deck and also just build in those extra slots in my mind where I just think to myself, like, okay, the 4th copy of this is going to be an energy for me because I really need to get that energy source down. Next, we have two Mecca Friezas. I'm playing two copies because I'm playing two copies of a different card at the 4 spot, and I really wanted to keep my one cost 10k combos to a minimum because this deck is really trying to be as pure as possible. Like, the goal is really get the opponent's life down to 2 or 3 life, which a lot of the decks in the format do on their own right now, and this deck just kind of punishes those. But also, I wanted to give myself access to a little bit more removal, which Mecha Frieza does. And what's cool about Mecha Frieza in conjunction with the Galactic Emperor Frieza Leader is at the end of the turn, after you've done your dual attack, you can then untap it again, so you don't have to worry about your Mecha Frieza dying. So again, great to pair it with the Galactic Emperor Frieza. The only thing is, in this deck, it's never a 4-drop because you have no way to protect, you have no way to untap your energy or untap your resources. So you never want to tap out completely on your turn and leave yourself susceptible to getting killed on your opponent's next turn, because turn 4 is a really powerful turn, and so is anything past turn 4. So Mech Freeze a lot of time is a 5 or 6 drop in this deck and is only used when needed. And again, additionally, it's another target for Avenging Frieza, so another card that we can thin out of the deck that has some use for us. So big fan. Next is two Raging Kabas. Surprisingly enough, one of the finishers in the deck. If a game is close, you could see this deck with a board state of having a hit on the table, a Kaba on the table, and then being able to swing out, and then your opponent think you're done, and then you evolve into a Raging Kaba for another double striker is huge. And then, of course, at the end of the turn, you're untapping 2 of your attackers. So, Raging Kaba, love in this deck. Huge fan. I mean, there's also turns where I've gone Kaba into Raging Kaba into Raging Kaba, so evolved multiple times, and that just gets nasty if you ever live the dream and do that, but don't count on living the dream that often. Otherwise, though, I think Raging Kaba is highly underplayed in a lot of the red aggressive decks, and I understand why. It's a 20k that really just gets the major benefit from coming down for only 3 energy and untapping your Kaba if it evolves, but I think with every red deck playing 4 Kabas, that running 2 or less Raging Kaba just for that live the dream turn is definitely worth it, because it can definitely punish an opponent for thinking that they've survived. Next, we have like one of the premier cards, or if not the premier card in the deck. We have 3 lightning fast hits. This is one of your ways to seal and win the game. That's why you play this deck, that's why you play this leader, because this leader does a really good job of protecting the 2-drop hit. So the 2-drop hit can stay in play as long as you need to, so then you can then evolve into the lightning fast hit and do that free 2 points of damage. So again, really cool to make it happen whenever you're playing the game. This deck originally ran 4 copies, but I felt like I was either getting the 4th trapped in my hand too often, or I'd have too many in my hand and I'd have to charge some, or my just draws it into being clunky, or some of them would be prized in the life point pile. So really big fan of running the 3x copies in the deck, and the win ratio for the deck is still relatively high. So I'm a big fan of 3 lightning fast hits as opposed to 4. Plus, Hit's probably one of the coolest characters in the actual show, so playing a deck with Hit, I'm always a huge fan of doing. So yeah, again, that's why you play the Galactic Emperor Frieza Leader for the most part, to protect your Hit. Next, we have our extras. My extras are all based around protecting my board state. 100%. It's protecting myself from my opponent's threats, things that they're trying to gain advantage on. I'm really trying to out-tempo them, and the best part about yellow's counters is that they do allow you to out-tempo the opponent. So again, huge fan of these cards. 4 Cold Bloodlust. This card, at the end of the day, is just flat out great. I think it's single-handedly the most powerful effect in the game. You get to play it at instant speed when your opponent plays a character, and you get to completely wipe away whatever they were looking to pick up from playing a character. Whether if it's a 4-drop Beerus, whether if it's a 5-drop Gotenks, or a 5-drop Princess Speed, denying your opponent the extra value that they were planning on getting is so much, again, that word virtual advantage. Cold Bloodless provides extreme amounts of virtual advantage to you. You throw off your opponent's tempo completely. They're having to play around this card the entire game, so they're worried about overextending or overinvesting. So this card not only just itself when played is powerful, but the fact that you can represent it every turn is huge. Again, as we talked about before, when we talked about managing your resources and managing your cards in hand, in this deck, leaving up a yellow is something you will do. Like, you will always leave up a yellow energy, because even if you don't have the Cold Bloodless or the Crusher Ball, you want your opponent to believe it's there, and you need to sell it hard. Whenever your opponent's about to play something or play a threat, play with your hand. Make it seem like you're already gripping the card and you're ready to play it. Make it seem like you're anxious. Like, ask them how many energy that they have. Like, ask these questions that get them to start thinking, like, oh man, does he really have the card? And then force them to play the card. Like, force them to play the card out, or force them to be conservative, because a lot of times people will be, because they're terrified of this card. So, Cold Bloodlust, play 4. Huge fan. Next, I already alluded to it, 4 Crusher Ball. This is essentially your removal. They play something, you tap it down with Crusher Ball, you go into your turn, and then you're able to wipe that off the table when you need to. Or sometimes, man, if your opponent's got a really big threat that you can't get rid of and you just need that extra turn, you can play the Crusher Ball against their Vados. If you don't have something on board to kill the Vados, then you just try and win that turn so they don't get done tap with it. But Crusher Ball, you know, by far another one of the best counter spells in the game itself, second to Cold Bloodlust. Next, keeping up with the theme, 3 Vados Assistants. It's in a gate, but the biggest thing about the negate that's important to me is, for some reason, if somebody is untapped, if somebody is tapped, I can untap them and protect them. And that's all this deck is about, is protecting your threats, so your opponent doesn't have the ability to remove them whenever you're trying to essentially win the game. So Vados Assistants, I'm a huge fan of. So as we talked about before, we talked about virtual advantage. If you guys have questions about that, please be sure to let me know. But essentially what it just comes down to is creating card advantage through something outside of actual cards. That's why a lot of people talk about Vegeta, they think is the best leader in the game. I think that Vegeta is a really good, straightforward leader. I think he's really linear in the fact that he just gives you cards. He's going to give you cards, and that's really big. But what I think we all really need to focus on is, when we're playing decks, is how to generate cards outside of that. How do we generate that extra advantage that's going to give us a win? And so going into set 2, that's something you need to think about, especially with people thinking that Goku Black the leader is bad. That's not true. Like, anything that does allow you to play something a turn ahead of schedule or 2 turns ahead of schedule is going to be a good card. Anything, because again, it's that virtual advantage, that virtual, like, I dropped my 4 drops of Masu on turn 2. Like, it's a 15k indestructible. Think about the X amount of value that you're going to generate over the course of the game. Like, these are the type of plays you should think of, is how many cards does this interaction create? If you think about the idea of Cold Bloodlusting a Prince of Speed Vegeta, they pay 5 energy. Sometimes players will tap out, which we've already talked about. You don't want to do that, but sometimes people will tap out, they'll play a Prince of Speed, and they'll want to draw these 2 cards. But if you play a Cold Bloodlust and you deny them those 2 cards, and they've tapped their energy for the turn, that is insane amounts of card advantage that you just gain. That is virtual advantage it's just huge for you. A lot of times you'll end up winning on your next turn, just because, oh wow, you tapped out and you didn't gain any cards off of that. Wow, good game. All right, I did it. Crusher Ball. Your opponent coming in and thinking to themselves, I'm going to finish the game with this card. Like, I'm going to play this Godbreak Son Goku, and I'm going to win this game right here, and you Crusher Ball them. Virtual advantage, you took that away from them. Or even if you're playing against the Red Mirror. I'm a huge fan of the Red Mirror. I will play turn 1. If I'm on the play, I will drop a yellow energy, and I will pass turn. And I will force them to play that Kaba. Because they will. If they play that Kaba and I Crusher Ball that Kaba, then on my turn I kill it, that is huge virtual advantage. That's a card that they didn't get that I'm now taking away from them. And I'm taking away all the future value that Kaba would have provided to them over the course of the game. Getting them closer to Awaken, getting them the double strike that they wanted, all those things. So whenever you think about these different plays, don't always just think about the obvious, like, I drew a card, that is a card. Also think about the X value, or the X factor in the game, which is virtual advantage. How do I create that? In Galactic Emperor Frieza, this card right here creates insane amounts of virtual advantage. Untapping your threats at the end of the turn denies your opponent the ability to attack those threats, which means they have to point at your leader. If they point at your leader, that means you draw cards. Or it means that they don't attack you at all. And that is, again, that's another turn that you get to take. That's another draw step you get to take. That's another energy you get to charge. That's just huge virtual advantage. So I can't stress that enough. So going into set 2, these are some key points that we need to keep in mind. So from the last video to this video, from actual card advantage and card knowledge to virtual advantage. And these are stuff that we'll continue to go over in videos as I do more and more deck profiles and things like that, and even start getting into gameplay videos. But other than that, I really appreciate you guys watching my videos. We have tens of subscribers now, tens. So that's really exciting. If you want to share the videos to your friends, I really appreciate it. Also, thank you for everyone that's giving me the really positive feedback. The tens of people giving me positive feedback. Nah, the hundreds of views that are coming in are awesome. So again, I appreciate it. Thank you for the time, and I hope you get good scrubs.